So this is Ron and Sharon Weiss talking about asparagus. So will you start by just telling us a little bit of your story about how you got started with the asparagus production?
Well, basically how we got started was we owned some land that had asparagus on it already, and we sold that, where we used to pick our asparagus. And so we decided that we would plant some, get started. So I did by seed, and that's how we kind of got started. Plant some in the back of our garden, in our garden and stuff. So.
So how have you approached marketing the product?
Well, we have done farmers market. We do the one in Mentor, Minnesota. That's a great one. It's just a few miles from our house. We've also done grocery stores. We've done like maybe 6 or 7 local grocery stores around the area. And then we've done we've added our logo on the back of the end gate of our pickup. So you have that Weiss Asparagus Farm on the back as kind of an advertisement.
So do people come to your farm to buy?
And we also have people that come, and just word of mouth, basically.
Say a little bit about what you've learned about variety selection for your location.
Well, we started out with the Mary Washington, but it has the female plant, and you get a lot of seeds in there. And in the fall, when it ferns out, you get a lot of seeds there, and they drop on the ground. And then you have a lot of small plants start, and that's just like a weed in there. You don't really want that. So now we've gone to more of the male varieties.
They put in another, like the Jersey Supreme and Jersey Night. We just put them in this last spring, so we haven't tested it yet as far as as far as yield and all that stuff it does. But that is an all male, so it should do. You won't have the seeds dropping.
You talked a little bit about the need to sell things right as you harvest. Can you kind of walk us through the harvesting process and the how you manage that, and then how you store it, even though it's a short period of time, how you handle it?
Yeah, right now, actually, the harvesting, you have to, basically, you're out there every day. You're cutting, you're out every day. We have, like, our family right now consists of our 4 kids, us, and then our parents will come over and help too. But you pick it, and then you come in and you have to, basically, we sort it by the spear, small, medium, large. So it's ready for the stores or to the customers. But before that, you have to wash it, and we trim the ends a little too, so they're getting the good quality. We trim the ends off.
So you've mentioned that you have your children and even your parents sometimes involved. Can you describe a little bit about how you run that staffing part of your business, and if what advice you have for others who want to include especially their family in their business?
Yeah, right now we basically have our kids and, like I said, our parents, and some neighbors will come over and help us too. But and eventually, I'm sure we'll have to hire. But so far, we've had them, and they bring their boyfriends back too, so it's kind of nice. They help too. So we grab anybody that's willing to help, because it does get busy, very busy.
So what kind of feedback do you get from your customers? And I guess you've got both customers that you know face to face, and then some you're dealing with the grocery store and they're selling to customers. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you get that feedback, as well as what folks tell you about the product.
I guess actually the customers like the quality. Quality is everything. You can't compare it to the stores, what they say. You're getting it the day we pick it, we're bringing it to them. They're getting the quality, they like that. And another thing is, when we come to the end of June, or to the end of our season, they don't want it to end. Can't you keep going? Well, it's the end of the season for asparagus, but they love it that much.
And you do delivery. Can you say a little bit about how you work that into your business model? And I imagine that has a lot to do with that needs to be sold right now.
Like when I go to work each day, I'll bring like a cooler. I just know I will get rid of it every day. And I do. They just know that, and they'll come and they'll ask, did you have any asparagus with you? And I do, so I do that.
How do you think your production matches up with the demand in the market? Or what do you see in terms of room for expansion or room for other people to fill some of that market? Can you say a little bit about how your scale matches up with the demand in the market?
Well, actually, he's got plans for another pretty sized field coming up for next year.
Okay.
I did preparation for this last fall, and so we planted another, well, she's got a 10-acre field that we'll be probably looking into planting.
Okay.
Yeah, so I set goals,
Mhm.
and one of them is to have a asparagus festival down the road.
So we asked a question of how far do people travel to buy your product, and from the way you access the market, you're going to them a lot.
Right. But the farmer's market brings in a lot of people there. We've had people from Washington,
Mhm.
California,
Mhm.
that will bring back to their families there. You know, they come, they know we have it, so
Mhm.
they come right to us and say they're from Washington and they want to bring some back, so.
So can you share one of your biggest lessons learned? Fabulous success, or that might be a challenge that you had to overcome?
I'd say you need to be committed to this project if you're gonna get into asparagus growing. It's a lot of work.
You should learn, do some studying up on it. Like, we've traveled to different people who grow asparagus,
Mhm.
several different ones,
Mhm.
and get some of their ideas. It's a learning experience, that's for sure.
Yeah. So from the time that you start, that you put those crowns in, or maybe you can say both from seed to spear, and from crown to spear, what's the time frame that we're
Harvesting.
talking about here? Yeah.
If you plant, by seed, it'll take the full 3 years before you can start to harvest. Now, if you can get a year crown or a 2-year crown, of course,
Mm.
but it takes 3 years, before you can start to harvest, but that'd lessen your time if you got a 1-year crown.
Mhm.
You can start harvesting in 2 years, so.
So you grow this in an outdoor field. Do you have wind protection, or do you have irrigation system? How do you?
We have trees planted all the way around it,
Okay.
just for wind protection,
Mhm.
but we don't have irrigation on it. If it gets real dry, we can just run like a garden, hose out and do a little bit of sprinkling like that. But
Okay.
when you're small, acres, you can do that, but
Yeah. Well, what do you love most about what you do
I
here?
like gardening, so that's one of I love
Mhm.
that, and I like talking to the people and communicating with the people, and I make lots of friends.
Mhm.
So I love that part of it.
Mhm. So this is Kim Swanson and Van Swanson, just for our records. And this is the garlic session. So we'll start by asking each of you to introduce yourselves and say a little bit about how you got started growing garlic.
Okay, I'm Kim Swanson. I work as a support staff in the Pennington County Extension Office, and that's how I got started with the high tunnel gardening. Terry Ninick would have some meetings come through, and we had one in town that I had the opportunity to tour, and it just piqued my interest. So that's kind of how I started. And garlic, why I started growing garlic is because of Terry. Again, he had a session on it, and we got to see his farm and how he grew it. And to me, it's a very easy plant to grow in the high tunnel, and it's not done during the peak of all the other things. So that's kind of how I started growing garlic.
I'm Van Swanson. We are not related, by the way, but we work in the same office. I work as a forage program coordinator in Pennington and Marshall County. And of course, being Kim was interested in going to high tunnel meetings, we went to several of them and thought that wouldn't be for us. But eventually we thought maybe we could do this. And I have a farm just located out of Thief River Falls, which kind of is a nice location for not only going to the farmer's market, but we sell on the farm now, and it's a nice location at Thief River, like 2.5 miles out, so it's very accessible to people that come. And when we started looking at why we would grow garlic, like Kim said, it's quite easy to grow, we found out. And then the other thing is, when we have a high tunnel, we do like to have quite a variety of product when people come to buy.
So what are some of the lessons that you've learned about the production of garlic? And maybe you can think about that in terms of what tips do you have for others who might want to get started?
One of the things is to, find a resource like somebody from the university or Terry or even a local grower and just ask them all the questions. And if probably find out the varieties. That was a really important thing when we first started. We had no idea about varieties, and then there's different kinds and what would grow here and what works. And so we just did a lot of just checking things out and doing that. So it like I said, is a relatively easier crop. Once you start getting to know what you need, we have a great supply of well-rotted manure because he has a beef farm, where High Tunnel is located. So, and that's very important to keep your soil organic and just a lot of organic matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, we just seem to enjoy growing it, and it turns out everything in the High Tunnel seems to be so good most of the time.
So how have you approached marketing this product, and maybe you can say a little bit about the rest of the produce that you grow at the High Tunnel also?
Well, when we first started the High Tunnels, there was not a farmer's market. We had no market. So we met with the chamber director who wanted some more community events in Thief River Falls. So we met with him, and the chamber kind of helped us start the farmer's market so that we had an outlet to sell from. And so we started the farmer's market for the first year. We went to it every Saturday. Then we decided that we had so much produce that once a week is not going to be enough to market our produce. So since he lives so close to town, just 3 miles out of town, we were open on Wednesday evenings too.
And we do have, just so you people know, we do have 2 high tunnels. Our first one we built was 48 feet long. I believe it's, 30 by 48. And then we figured that maybe wasn't big enough to produce as much as we eventually found out we could sell. So then we did build another one that's 96 feet long. And so we have 2 of them right now, and I think that's as large as we will get because it's a lot of work, but fairly manageable with the 6 of us, especially being we're working full time. But we also, just to get started in the farmers market, we had gone to a lot of meetings that talked about farmers markets and minimum pricing and how to kind of begin. So we had a little bit of knowledge of that. So along with the chamber, we met and we started the market. And we were one of the few, I think the only ones at the beginning that had high tunnels.
Say a little bit about what you've learned about variety selection for, especially for garlic in northern Minnesota.
The garlic varieties, I kind of did some research when I was looking for the first seed because nobody around here had seeds. So I did some on the internet. I talked to Terry. He has a couple of handouts that we have done and I've looked at, and so his suggestion, everybody's suggestion, even out there, was Music, which is a hardneck garlic, a porcelain type, and Music was probably the most popular. So that's something we started with, and then I just kind of took a look and seen what else was out there, and I did Extra German Hardy, and then it was a red kind, which we don't grow anymore.
What are some of the harvesting considerations for your product? And this is one that's a little bit off-season with the others. So say a little bit about how you harvest it and how you prepare it for storage and how you store it.
Well, we, first of all, in the spring of the year, I suppose the garlic, maybe not, it's a spring, but it's a little bit later spring, the garlic will get to be probably 2.5 feet tall. And at that point, it seems like the leaves are done growing, but then it will send out of the very center what is called a scape. And that is basically a stem that comes out with a seed pod on the end. It's trying to make seed is what it's really trying to do. And that will shoot up at first, and then when it gets to be maybe about, and it'll start curling earlier, but when it gets to be maybe about 12 inches, maybe even a little longer, it gets very curly. Well, we cut those off, and we don't use the pod part, but from the pod down to the stem, the rest of the stem, we actually sell at the farmer's market in a raw product, and you can chop that up and use garlic as you would.
You have an interesting model of how you staff your organization there with the 3 couples working together. Maybe there are other family members and friends involved too. Say a little bit about the structure that you use and then what advice you have for others as they think about how to include other people in their business?
We mostly just stick to us 6 people, I guess. Sometimes people will come out on Wednesday evenings and want to pick their own. We are right by them because we don't want them hurting the plants at all, but we'll maybe go through with that. We like to do it ourselves because it's such a you ruin one plant and you can ruin quite a bit of your profit just because somebody came in and maybe pulled something that they shouldn't have. So,
Do you think you've saturated the local market with your product, or where do you think you are with meeting the demand?
as far as garlic, I don't think so. It's kind of an education. There's never been fresh garlic sold in our area before, and right now we are probably one of the only ones that sell it with some volume. So I think as the market grows, we can grow, but like Van said, we are at our peak in our production area because we just don't have the room for it right now.
Can you say a little bit about the people that come to the farmer's market and to the farm, how far they travel, kind of who you see, people, tourists or local folks?
Probably mostly local folks, but a few. What was really interesting this summer is a young couple came and they have planned out their meals for 2 weeks, and they want local grown foods, so they'll go to the different farmers markets, and I think they were from Argyle? Carlston.
Mm-hmm.
And they came to our stand looking for certain things that were in their recipes and just checking some prices and things like that. So yeah, mostly local people for now, but I see some of the smaller communities, probably more to the north of us, coming to see our farmers market. And
You mentioned one of your lessons learned earlier about dehydrating garlic. Are there any other lessons learned that you think are worth sharing?
I'm not sure if we mentioned how far we plant them apart, and that's up to people. We have we only utilize one side of our long high tunnel for garlic because in a high tunnel, remember, those of you not familiar, if you grow tomatoes, I mean, you get a lot of tomatoes. They produce early to late. Same with peppers. Same with cucumbers. You plant garlic, carrots, some of those, you get one. And once you pull it up, you're done.
Well, it seems like you enjoy what you do a lot. What do you love most about what you're doing?
You better love gardening if you're doing any of it. And I think we love it's good to have other people in it because of not only the company but the expertise. We all have a little different talent one way or another, and it really works that way. I mean, Kim is awesome on like I said, the fertilizer, the planting. We plant a lot of stuff in her house, and to begin with, and she has to babysit that, and we come over and help transplant. But she does a wonderful job there. We all kind of harvest together. We get along very well. I think that's a key. Have trust in one another that you're all holding up your own end, and a lot of times after we sell, we have supper together. So,
Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
no, I guess I think we've maybe expressed everything about garlic and maybe too much even about high tunnels and other products. But
And the University of Minnesota has amazing resources for garlic, on the website. So if anybody wants to get started and they don't know how to go about it, always contact people that grow it, or we have great mentors in Erskine, Chuck and Barb Scholstedt. If we ever have questions on things, we're always asking them, or Terry Ninick, or the website too. They all have step by step and pretty much everything you need to know.
I got started in aquaculture or in hydroponics through aquaculture. It was designed into my aquaculture hatchery, or my fish hatchery here, when I designed it. Aquaculture is problematic in that you build up nutrients in the water. Those nutrients need to be filtered out. In a natural system, they're filtered out by aquatic macrophytes or higher plants. My plan was to eliminate the use of those plants and use those nutrients to grow these plants.
Tell us a little bit about some of the lessons you've learned about the production of kale, spinach, romaine, other vegetables, and what tips would you have for others who might be interested in getting started or scaling up their own production?
The first thing I would do if I were growing and wanting to learn is I would go on the internet, and I would not necessarily go to any site that's trying to sell you something. Go on the internet, do a Google search, do a Google search on hydroponics, and then go to the images. Not the companies that are trying to sell you a system, because most of those systems are scaled for hobbyists. We have several in the United States that are scaled for commercial scale, which is Crop King and M Hydro. Both of them have great systems. I know people who are using both. They function very well. Many of them are automated. Don't require you to do anything but monitor them every 24 hours for a few minutes a day to make sure the automation's in place.
How have you approached marketing your product, or if you have approached marketing, how have you?
I actually put my product, I grew it, I put it out on the market, I allowed people to try it, and it grew from there, exponentially on its own. In fact, it grew right now where I can't keep up with the demand.
So would you say that the quality in some senses has done the marketing for you?
Yeah. That was my intent in the first place, is to bring it out there and allow the public, the people who are going to buy it, to consume it when it's their response that drives this. If you're producing a product that nobody wants to buy, then why are you producing it? And in this case, the product exceeded my expectations.
What have you learned about the variety of selection for northern Minnesota? I imagine you'll have some interesting, helpful perspective on this, given...
You mean in what we have available, or what we could have available?
I would lean more towards the what could we have available, but I'd say go, you could answer both or either, whichever you prefer.
All of our salad crops could be produced locally in Minnesota. Greens and cole crops can be produced year-round easily in Minnesota. Tomatoes and cucumbers will require artificial light, but also could be produced in Minnesota. We have, if you look in Canada, Manitoba, Montreal, Quebec, all of these provinces, cities, have hydroponic production facilities. They have greenhouses operating year-round. They don't buy their produce from Mexico when they can get it locally.
What are some of the harvesting considerations for your product?
Harvesting is pretty easy here. Can I go grab something real quick?
Please, that'd be great. Good.
Ready? This is a cheap little invention that I've got. It's this piece of 6-inch PVC. You can buy this at any hardware chain store. This is a produce bag that you can buy on a roll. They're $2,500 to $3,000 to a roll. You put it over the top. You pick the leaves and you put it in. It gives you a bagging system. When I do a head of romaine, I slide the entire head of romaine, put the roots in it, slide it all the way through, and pull it through the bottom. My wife and I can bag up 400 heads of romaine and box them in about 2.5 hours.
Do you engage other family members or friends in your business? If yes, what advice do you have for others before they invite or include family, friends in their business operations?
My wife works with me when we do harvest, grudgingly sometimes, because it's usually, when we harvest for the school districts, it's Sunday mornings. And I think she'd rather be resting. She works a 5-day-a-week job. I have my son work with me when he's available, and he's in the National Guard, so he's not always here. Families getting involved could be a great asset.
What kind of feedback do you get? You shared a little bit about this. But I'd love to hear you elaborate on the kind of feedback that you get from your customers about the variety of produce that you've been selling.
I am constantly asking my customers for feedback. It's absolutely necessary in this business. If something's wrong, there's a complaint, I want to know about it. I'll make it right one way or another. I have that ability. I ask people if there's something else they want me to grow or want me to try.
You've already addressed this too, but I'll ask you to just speak a little bit further to the question of, do you feel you've saturated the local market with your product or not?
Depends on what you call local. In order to saturate the market, I would have to call local staples. And yes, I could saturate the market here. I don't, because one, I don't believe in doing that.
And how far along that same line, how far do you think or know of that people have traveled to buy your product?
I've had people that come up here for vacation that are waiting in line for it. I have people that come from Wadena, Brainerd. I go into Brainerd once a week because I shoot pool league, and I carry produce with me when I go into Brainerd because I have people there that want it. I have restaurants and institutions that want it on a regular basis, and if I could produce it better than what I am, they'd take everything I can produce.
Can you share one of the biggest lessons you've learned in all of this over the last several years? Anything come to mind?
Biggest lessons I've learned. Look at, if you're going to build a facility or you're going to design a facility, look at past designs, look at current designs, and model it to your environment. Minnesota is a very harsh environment in the wintertime, and we need structures designed for growing in this type of climate.
The Wild Food Summit began, I believe it was 8 years ago. It was basically the brainchild of a woman named Sunny Johnson, now Sunny Savage, who worked for the White Earth Tribal and Community College Extension Service at that point in time. And the original one was basically kind of a conference setup. It was an event with keynote speakers. It was mostly inside. There were some plant walks outside, but it was kind of more of a PowerPoint and sitting inside type of a program. And it was really good, was really successful. People liked it a lot. But what we decided to do in subsequent years was to make it more hands-on, and the goal was really to take people from learning about wild foods to actually participating in the process, because there's a huge jump for people moving from knowing that something is possible to actually having done it themselves. And so we really want that to be a big part of the summit. And so from every year after that, we had the more participatory model where it was all outside. It was at some kind of a outdoor setting. People camped out. We did the cooking ourselves instead of having a kitchen staff involved with that. And so the goal was to the extent possible, let people participate in the harvesting, processing, and the preparation of the wild foods. And so they got as much hands-on as they were willing to commit to, I guess.
My name is Rebecca Dallinger, and I'm an extension coordinator for special projects here at the White Earth Tribal and Community College. I've been coordinating the Wild Food Summit since 2010, and I often, people ask what is so special about the Wild Food Summit or why it works, and you know, it's really how you put your heart into something. This Wild Food Summit has been going on since 2006, and it's really a creation of a community. The camping really helps to create that community, and having it in a beautiful environment. We've always had it on a lake, and that really adds another aspect that allows people to really get into nature, which is the whole point of the summit, is to be able to forage and be in this beautiful setting and to learn from people who are knowledgeable about harvesting. The other two things that make it really work and are fun are the talent show. Saturday night we have a talent show, whatever your talent is or isn't. Come in and bring it forward. We have a guy named Bob Shimmick, who's a well-known person at White Earth, who MCs the event and has really created that talent show. And that allows all the little kids and the families and people who can sing and people who can't sing to share their gifts that night. And it gets pretty off the wall and funny. And so having that kind of ability to just kind of have some quiet time and have a show that's not even about wild food, but just about being together is something else that really works about the summit. And then the other piece of it that we do, and it's been growing each year, is doing a barter and trade time. Usually afternoons are our open free time, and we do a barter and trade session on Saturdays. And that just allows people to bring out the goods that they've made, because we really encourage it to be things that you've made yourself, so that it's really about homemade things, jams, jellies, dried nuts, whatever it is, to keep going with that wild food part is just really special. And that's when people get to take away something that reminds them of the summit.
Hi, I'm Tammy Bellinger, Extension Coordinator at the White Earth Tribal and Community College. If you're looking for resources, we have a variety listed. You can look at foraging events such as minnesotamushrooms.org. There's lots of great entities that work with wild foods. We have other area wild harvest festivals that you can go and learn more. Is the Midwest Harvest Festival held in Prairie du Chien in Wisconsin, and upcoming September 12th through the 14th this year, 2014. Also the North Carolina Wild Food Weekend in Reidsville, North Carolina, April 2014. And then there's lots of different wild foragers that you can contact. There's Wildman Steve Brill, Linda Conroy, Sam Thayer. He has wonderful books, and so do the others. There's the Foragers Wild Food Basics, and you can take a look at others that are listed on the resource guide. And also Laura Reeves, who's up in Canada, she has some great information to share as well.
Hi, my name is Mike Reichenbach, and I'm pleased to be part of the 2014 Local Foods College. I'll be speaking about foods from the woods, connections to people and places. And in this presentation, I will talk about my connections to the woods through foods gathered. And as I present, I hope you will think about the foods you have gathered and the access to places to gather. I know that some of you are seeking to buy property or may already own property, and that's great. But what are the options if you don't own property? And before we get to that, I want to first describe a new resource, the Minnesota Harvester Handbook. The Minnesota Harvester Handbook showcases sustainable harvest and gathering for 25 non-timber forest products. It also describes markets for those products that might be harvested commercially. With the help of a number of contributors, the Minnesota Harvester Handbook was authored by David Wilsey and Julie Midkey. The handbook is easy to use. You can search the fact sheets by season of harvest or by the product type, such as edible mushrooms or holiday decor. Each fact sheet includes detailed information about harvest strategies, market options, and regulations. The Minnesota Harvester Handbook is your entry into the world of natural resource gathering. I hope the handbook helps you to make connections with special places and people. We as individuals connect to the land and to people through our use of special products. What foods from the woods have you used? Think about the times during your life or your parents' parents' and grandparents' lives when these products were used. Also think about when certain products become available seasonally. So through a few examples, I want to share some of the connections I have made to foods harvested from the woods. Starting with the picture over on the right, the black and white picture of the dandelion. As a kid, I knew you could eat dandelions. I tried it, and I wondered why anyone would collect these and eat them. They were bitter. Time of year may have had a lot to do with my first impression. About 4 years ago, I was leading a group of youth from Georgia on an early spring Boundary Waters Canoe Area wilderness trip. We were discussing wild greens. Dandelion was mentioned more than once. The campsite we were at used to be a commercial lodge or resort, and dandelions were readily available. We collected some and made a very tasty side dish for our breakfast meal. I made a connection between dandelions, camping, and friends. Moving down to the black and white line drawing of the leaf, the flowers, and the oak acorn. It's a bur oak. I collect and eat acorns. I first tried them when learning to identify trees. I read that acorns, at least some of them, were edible, that those in the white oak group were the best. The white oak group has leaves with rounded lobes as opposed to leaves with spines at the end of the lobes. The acorns from the bur oak in Barnum, Minnesota can be eaten fresh right from the tree. Other acorns need to go through a process that leaches the tannins, or the bitterness, out of them. I have made a connection here between eating oak acorns and my career as a forester. The top middle photo is of common plantain. To me, this has always been a weed. I was riding bicycle along a bike path in Chicago's forest preserves and went past several women collecting greens. I stopped to ask what type of greens they were collecting, and they replied, plantain. I asked my mom about the use of plantain because I was somewhat confused, and she said that yes, she had collected this for greens as a child during the Depression. So that helped me connect both to my mom and to the Depression, and also to access to land, which I'll talk about in the next few slides. I have many other stories about connections I have made between harvesting wild foods, places, and people, including collecting blackberries for jam and collecting mushrooms with friends. I'm sure you also have stories about collecting foods from the woods, and I hope you're able to share your stories with others. My experience of the women collecting greens from the public property in Chicago caused me to think about access to land. As I talked to them about their collection, I noticed that they were tentative or a little bit afraid of telling me what they were doing. And so the issue of access goes beyond a respect for private property or having a permit and following regulations regarding commercial and non-commercial harvest. It raises some questions about whether people in your community have access to land. Where might they get access, and what might be needed to allow access? Do people feel comfortable and safe if they were to collect food from the woods? As Minnesota's demographics shift, how might the use of the land for collection of wild foods change? How might it stay the same? I don't have the answers to these questions. I think they are important ones as we work in our communities on sustainable and safe access to food. In closing, harvesting wild foods is about our connection to the land, and it is about our relationship to others. My final comment is to harvest only what you need and think about those who will follow. You can contact me anytime at reich027@umn.edu. And if you're interested in the Harvester Handbook, you can find it online at z.umn.edu/harvesterhandbook. Thank you.